And welcome back to the Engage 8 podcast, hosted by Noah Drury here today with Logan Berner. Logan, how is your night going?
Oh, pretty good. Astros are losing, so it's always a good night here.
Not too much of a avid baseball watcher late in the season. I watched Tigers early on in the season, but maybe in March, April, we'll be talking about the Detroit Tigers potentially making a World Series run.
Yeah, let's pray for that.
Yeah, I don't know. They're switching up management there and stuff. So, I mean, they're trying to do something. Maybe the Lions and if the Pistons keep doing the things that they keep doing, maybe they should all do the same. So,
Hey, Detroit's a hockey town. Red Wings are good, and that's all that really matters.
Logan is a baseball player for our high school baseball team on the varsity team. He is currently committed to Indiana Tech, which is a NAIA school, and he's going to be He plans on to attend there in the fall of 2023. Talk about a little
Yeah.
bit about like how the recruiting process is different from like baseball, maybe, and from like other sports.
Well, I don't know how much I can speak on too many other sports other than like the couple sports that I got friends going through the process. And
Right.
I can just say for baseball, it's a lot of unless you're a big name recruit throwing 90 on the mound for guys that, aren't as eye popping when you just look at numbers of velos and stuff. It's a lot of just, sending out emails, building a rapport with these coaches, and then, just end up getting on visits, see as many colleges as you can, and find the school that you end up liking and you think is going to work best for you. And it's a stressful process, but once it gets moving, it can be a lot of fun. So,
Yeah, that seems pretty awesome. I know a couple football people, and I mean, I bet you know too, since we both go to the same school. Like how their recruiting process bends, how it is like you mainly like unless you're these top guys that are going to these like big camps or going to these huge showcases that you're getting paid for to go there or get selected to go to, you're really just kind of on your own and trying to get your name out there, whether it's social media or contacting coaches, etc. So,
yeah, I can speak on, I have a friend who at Heartland, tight end Jackson Wilson.
yeah,
He's 6'5". He's got the build for it, got the skill for it. So I know he gets reached out to by a lot of coaches
right.
daily. But for other guys that maybe don't have that, I shouldn't say skill level, but
Don't have
maybe like the physical stature and
and
size.
exposure, all that stuff.
Yeah, yeah, it's just getting yourself kind of out there, putting yourself out there, um, making sure these college coaches are finding a way to see you because especially at, I can speak for the NAIA level and the D3 level, because that's pretty much what I was looking at. A lot of those coaches don't even do a lot of, super active recruiting because they're not going to waste their time recruiting the guy that's throwing 95 because at the end of the day, he's not going there.
Right.
Um, so a lot of their recruiting is done off of people that reach out to them. So I know that's really important for anybody who is looking to get recruited at that level.
Right on, right on. All right, Logan. We're both avid college football watchers. So I know you used to make your own top 25s, back in the day. I don't know if you still do or not, but the college football playoff rankings came out tonight at 7 o'clock on ESPN. Us for the football team, we had our senior night late hit, so wasn't able to watch the show live, but I have the rankings pulled up right now, and I guess I'm going to go through the 1 through 5 teams so far. We'll just go from top to bottom. We have Tennessee at 1, Ohio State at 2, Georgia at 3, Clemson at 4, and Michigan on 5. Anything that like is eye popping to you, or maybe that caught you a little bit off guard, or do you want to talk about one or two teams in specific?
Yeah, well, before the college football playoff committee released theirs, I did do my own top 25.
All right.
Um, but I actually also did the top five of what I predicted the committee was going to do. Um, so in my top 25, I have Michigan at 4, Clemson at 5. I can go into that in a minute, but I did predict that the committee was going to put Clemson at 4 ahead of Michigan. Um, seems like, people talk about it a lot, but that SEC and Clemson bias kind of sneaking in. Um, Maybe you think differently, but to me, I don't know how you can argue Clemson's done more than Michigan has this season. That's kind of the one glaring thing I would say. I really like Michigan at 4. The rest of the top 5, I don't really mind, but I would like Michigan over Clemson.
I was a little bit surprised to see, Tennessee put at number 1 by the committee, especially because the AP voters put Tennessee at 2. But also the AP people have to submit their ballots by an extremely bad time. Like they don't even have time to like catch up on games, or if they didn't see it live, or if they're doing something else with their job on a weekend, they don't really get to watch college football. So they're kind of just submitting random ballots at that point, kind of just like, oh yeah, I think they're gonna be there by the end of the night, so I'll put it there. I'm really surprised to see this Tennessee team at 1. I don't think they have necessarily the greatest pass coverage, but they're an awesome pass rushing team. Their front sevens is pretty good in general, and then obviously, their explosive big play offense. Other than that, I agree with you on the Clemson should be behind Michigan just in terms of, I mean, I guess the strength of schedules are, not too different. Michigan does have a top 5 or top 25 win against Penn State and Clemson. I mean, I'm pretty sure their best win is NC State or Wake Forest or Syracuse, but like those are, I think Penn State whoops all 3 of those ACC teams. Do you want to give your a little bit of your analysis on why Michigan should be ranked over Clemson?
Yeah, well, what I think super interesting about when you're looking at those two teams is like everyone kind of was wondering where's Penn State going to fall in the committee's ranking. And if the committee honestly thinks they're the 15th best team, that win is better than anything Clemson has on their schedule, with their best win probably being Syracuse, who comes in at 20. And I mean, I was watching that game, as a big Michigan State fan, always rooting for Michigan to lose. Um, and the second half, I mean, it was total domination from Michigan from really start to finish of that second half. So I don't know if I really see the reasoning for Michigan to not be there. There really has not been the game where like you've scratched your head and been like, huh, I wonder if Michigan's that team where Clemson maybe has had that hiccup or two. Um, it is interesting, JJ McCarthy really has not been pushed too much this year, but I don't know. I just think the run game that Michigan brings, their defense, which has been spectacular, I just don't see much of a reason for Clemson to be ahead. Because I think almost in every aspect, Michigan has done better this year. So that's kind of my take on it.
Yeah, I mean Clemson maybe like the only thing that's like an overall position group that's better than Michigan's maybe the D line just because they recruit freaks down there. But I mean Michigan like the only game that had me like in question of them, which was early on in the season when they played Maryland, because Maryland was just able to recover all their receivers, and really JJ McCarthy had all day and still couldn't really get too much done or lead, a receiver to get open downfield or anything like that. But like I look at the Michigan schedule, obviously their first 3 weeks were kind of jokes, but even in Big Ten play, I know they're not gonna like I don't think a lot of people understand, and I'm pretty sure this is the committee at fault here too. They're not gonna blow out teams the way they try to control the clock, gain 5 to 8 yards at a time, not try to just score off of big plays. Where Clemson, I mean, they aren't the greatest, big explosive team either, especially with DJ and Cade Klubnik, being their quarterbacks, not known as like, I'm going to throw the ball 50 yards down the field like a Hendon Hooker or Bo Nix. But, I mean, I think defensively Michigan's better, and offensively, like I just feel like right now I'd take Michigan in a game against Clemson just because of how Michigan schemes their whole entire game plan, and I feel like Clemson's kind of gotten lucky with coming out with a win in some of their games.
Yeah, I would put Michigan on a neutral field, probably pick them to win over Clemson if they were playing tonight. So,
Right, and I
um,
mean, I don't mean to interrupt. Ohio State at 2. I don't think there's any their only test, really, honestly. I mean, they just had a test this weekend, and honestly, I feel like if Mayan Williams, touches the field more and doesn't get hurt, and if they're not using Trevion Henderson, who is probably the most overrated running back in the country, I feel like they dominate that game a little bit more with controlling the clock and stuff like that. I thought Tumalea or whatever the linebacker since slash like defensive end pass rusher had an
Hmm.
amazing game. So he definitely
I, I
broke out.
I like Ohio State at 3. I will say I went Georgia, Tennessee, Ohio State for my top 3.
Okay.
Um, I do like Ohio State at 3. I think 2. I was surprised to see them over Georgia. When you just compare the resumes, I mean, but Georgia, I guess, hasn't played anybody either outside of the number 8 team in the nation, which that was still a dominating win. Just Ohio State, I think that was their first time playing a team that even deserves to be somewhat close to the top 25, and it didn't go as smoothly for Ohio State as I think a lot of people thought. And the score of that football game did not reflect how close I think that game was.
Right. I think if that game's in Columbus, though, I think it's a way different just a way different type of game than it was being in Happy Valley. The thing with Georgia and Oregon, one, it was Bo Nix's first test in an actual game, and it was also in Atlanta, closer to Georgia too. So I mean I take week one with like a little bit of grain of salt. I think a lot of the teams that should play in week one don't end up looking like how they would in like week 10 or week 11.
Yeah, I agree with you there. That's kind of what keeps Oregon ranked high on my rankings here, and Oregon's looked really good. I know we'll get there in a minute, but I think that win for Georgia speaks volumes too, because like that's a good team, and Georgia kind of, Georgia absolutely blew them out,
Right.
and it was basically a home game. But Georgia really hasn't, outside of that one random game against Missouri, Georgia really hasn't had a close game. So to see Ohio State kind of waver a little bit against Penn State, especially mid second half, I was a little surprised to see Ohio State ahead, but obviously that'll all clear up here anyway with this Georgia Tennessee game and the winner of that obviously taking the number 1 spot in the rankings next week.
Right on. Just to touch on a little bit on Georgia, that game against Florida, I feel like they played half of the game and still ended up dominating in the end. Transitioning into the 6 through 10, I guess what we'll get through next. We have Alabama at 6, TCU at 7, Oregon at 8, USC at 9, and LSU at 10. Anything that opens your eyes out a little here, has you like scratching your head a little bit?
I don't think so. I had the same 6 through 9, 10. I have LSU at 11. So I don't think really anything that was, kind of eye-boggling there. Um, LSU good win against Ole Miss last week. I see why they have them at 10. That's a team that they seem like they just keep getting better. After they kind of stumbled their way early in the season to Florida State, everyone kind of questioned, how good is this LSU team going to be? I think I think they're getting better as the year goes on. That'll be a team to watch down the stretch. But yeah, nothing really surprising, I don't think, in this group of 5 here.
Right. Alabama's only loss being to the number one team in the country. And honestly, they've looked good in every single game. I know they've had like parts of games like when Milroe came in against Arkansas and they had a little hiccup there where Arkansas made it a game and then they ended up pulling away. I still think they have the third best quarterback in the country as of right now, and they're still a great football team. I think defensively, they're definitely not, the typical Alabama defense that normally kind of just like dominates and doesn't even let teams like in the game. Like offenses have been able to move the ball and score on the Crimson Tide, but I still think they're the number 6 team in the country, and if they end up winning out and winning the SEC championship, they're probably going to be ranked in the top 4 at the end of the year if all goes to plan for them. Oregon at 8. Honestly, I'd probably rank them over TCU at this point. A little bit of kind of controversy. I know TCU is undefeated, but they play one side of the ball, and their conference isn't known for playing defense other than teams like Iowa State, and that's about it. And I just don't think. I mean, Max Duggan's a great quarterback, and they got great playmakers like Barber and everything like that. But I just don't. I don't trust a team. Like we've always seen it in the past with Oklahoma making the college football playoff, where they're a great offensive team and are a product of the best offensive team in their conference, but they can't play the other side of the ball.
No, I do agree. I honestly don't mind whether you have TCU or Oregon ahead. Um, I think both teams kind of deserve to be there. TCU, I think, has those bigger name wins, wins over Oklahoma State, Kansas State. Both of those teams are in the top 25. Kansas obviously was a team that was there, but the one thing I will say about TCU is you have to question like Kansas. I'm blanking on his name, starting quarterback.
Jalen Daniels.
Yeah, Daniels doesn't go out. Does Kansas lose that football game? Kind of question there. The Oklahoma State game was double overtime. That honestly could have gone either way. Um, so the only like I think really like convincing win they had was the win over Kansas State, which I don't know if I'm completely sold on them yet as a football team either. Because like you said, the Big 12, it's kind of one sided. So I see why TCU is ahead. I don't think it really matters who you have at this point, TCU or Oregon. I do think it'll work itself out. I honestly don't see TCU beating Texas in 2 weeks. That's just me though. Um, but I would be very surprised if you saw TCU at 12-0, or sorry, 13-0, Big 12 champions, because I think if TCU loses at all, there's probably zero path into the college football playoff for them. So I think it will work itself out at some point. But
Yeah, the only thing I'd maybe switch, another thing I'd switch here is maybe putting UCLA at 10 and putting LSU at 11, and then Ole Miss at 12, just because LSU does have a unranked loss to Florida State, and I mean they also lost to Tennessee, but mind you, they also got dominated that game, and UCLA's only losses to a pretty good Oregon football team who they were in that game until Oregon started pulling away in the fourth quarter. That's the only thing I'd change. I still think they should be ranked ahead of Ole Miss, even though they have one more loss, just because of the head-to-head win. I think that matters really much, especially as of recent with recency bias. Transitioning into is there anything else that you wanted to cover through the 6 through 10, or is that not pretty much? I mean, I think USC's at a perfect spot. I mean, one loss to Utah, but I mean that game was in Utah, so I'm kind of over it.
no, I think so too. I did have UCLA at 10. I will say, I think this does kind of speak to the Pac 12. I know normally the Pac 12 is pretty weak, kind of question maybe of one team coming out of it. I think the Pac 12 is the best it's been in a really long time. I mean, that's four teams in the top 15, with Utah right in there as well. So I think I think this is actually a really good year for the Pac-12. Unfortunately, I think everybody's too good in that conference, and there's not one team that's great enough to probably get into the college football playoff this year. So it probably will be another Pac-12 less college football playoff. But I think that's the reason why they're going to 12 teams, because I think some of these Pac-12 teams absolutely do deserve a shot to get in this year, and it's a shame that they all are kind of similar to each other and beating up on each other out there.
Right. You could say the same thing for the Big 12 as well. There's no
Absolutely, yeah.
one leader, but I also think the Pac-12 at the top is probably better than the Big 12, but I mean, we'll find out here if one of them makes the college football playoff and ends up losing to the three SEC teams that are going to make it. We have 11 through 15. We have Ole Miss at 11, UCLA at 12, Kansas State at 13, Utah at 14, and Penn State at 15. Anything that you want to talk about first?
I am a little surprised to see Penn State that high. I don't mind them that high. I was a little surprised to see it with the two losses. I think it is a good spot for them, but I think Penn State being at 15 does carry weight for kind of Michigan and Ohio State too. Both teams that played absolutely nobody all out of conference. So Penn State being there, I think, is less for their program and more for, all right, it helps Ohio State and Michigan, because I think Penn State, kind of they are what they are. Probably not going to go to a New Year's Six bowl. It's just kind of too log jammed at the top with those two losses. That's the only thing I'd say to that. Kansas State, man, I was not sold on Kansas State, and then they just beat Oklahoma State by 48. So shutout win too. So maybe Kansas State's the real deal. I don't know if you have something to say on that, but
I
yeah,
think that
very
it's really
interesting.
funny that the starting quarterback, Adrian Martinez, who's been in college football for way too long and was at Nebraska before transferring to Kansas State, I can't believe he got hurt. And I was actually really high on this Oklahoma State team because traditionally they're known for playing defense and kind of just like running the football. But Spencer Sanders has, I felt like for the through first 8 weeks, sorry. that he was actually playing amazing and leading, getting playmakers open for him, and they were winning football games, and then all of a sudden, here comes Kansas State, coming playing at home in Manhattan, Kansas, and they just absolutely just smacked the crap out of Oklahoma State with a backup quarterback. Deuce Vaughn is an amazing running back, probably top 5. I mean, depending on where you place him. Who else you think's a top running back in the country right now? I know he was on like a lot of preseason, like maybe potential Heisman lists and stuff like that. But I mean, his playmaking ability, and then Howard able to just hit his receivers and be accurate, and them getting touchdowns. Jim Knowles was a huge playmaker for the Kansas State Wildcats on Saturday. Uh, I guess I mean, I kind of like look at Penn State as, they're not a team with quality wins, but they have quality losses. And I mean, the committee, if they actually watched the game that happened with Ohio State on Saturday, Penn State was in it for 3.5 quarters and then kind of just had everything unfold for them at the end, with Ohio State showing that they were the better team in the end. Other than you, I think UCLA should be higher. I really don't have a problem. I think Utah's in a perfect spot too, or where they should be.
Yeah, I think the committee kind of nailed this section here. No complaint. Um, yeah, I don't have much else to say. I think it's pretty good.
All right. Let's get through 16 through 20. We have Illinois, North Carolina, Oklahoma State, Tulane, and Syracuse.
All right, I'll start by saying I do not believe Illinois is a good football team. Well, they're a good football team. I do not think they are a top 20 caliber football team. I think they're going to go get absolutely embarrassed by Michigan this weekend. So
You
I'll
mean
start there with six.
Michigan State?
Oh, it is Michigan State. Sorry, Michigan in 2 or 3 weeks, whenever that game is.
Okay.
God, I think Illinois will beat Michigan State, unfortunately, this week. But it's not that good of an Illinois team. I'm not going to lie. Um, I think the best one that they have is the game at home against Minnesota. Um, I mean, the at home against Iowa, that was only a 3-point win. Lost to Indiana early in the year. Best out of conference win was Virginia. Just the schedule and resume is just not that impressive. And honestly, I know that only one loss is probably the reason why they're sitting at 16. But personally, I think there is multiple teams below them that I think on a neutral field would beat Illinois.
Right. I mean, they kind of play as the same play style as Michigan last year. Run the football, get like 4 or 5 yards a carry, have your quarterback throw when you need him to, and just rely on your defense to just make plays. And I will admit, Illinois secondary is probably like second to none. I think they've been playing amazing this season. Wither or Weatherspoon or whatever that kid's name is, he's a baller. I saw he was on like a lot of mid All American teams on CBS, which the podcast I listen to is CBS. It's a CBS Sports podcast. It's called the Cover 3 podcast. I think this Illinois team, I think, yeah, you're right. They're going to get blown out by Michigan, but I don't know. I feel like they should be like, maybe at the end of the season, they'll be towards the bottom of the 25 rather than where they're at right now. I still think they're a good football team, but I agree with you that maybe right now they're not going to be the 16th team at the end of the year, but it kind of makes sense right now.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to watch. I mean, that's it. I think the Big Ten West is probably one of the worst Power Five divisions in all of football.
It might be the worst.
It might be the worst.
No,
yeah,
North Carolina's division's really bad too, which is the team ranked below.
right below. Which that'll be a debate. I have North Carolina ahead. Get there in a minute, but I don't know, the Big Ten West. It's probably the worst, if not maybe the second worst. So this is an Illinois team that's probably going to be playing in the Big Ten championship. With the head-to-head against Purdue as well, if they can beat Purdue in 2 weeks, which that game at home, I think they will. I don't know. I don't think it's a very competitive Illinois team, which is unfortunate because I think pretty much the team running out of the Big Ten East is going to come in as 3 touchdown favorites into that Big Ten championship game. But
right, and I think the problem with Illinois is, I mean, they have that loss against Indiana, but Indiana's not an explosive offense. They haven't played like a great offensive team either. Like you
No,
look at their out of conference was Virginia, who's been miserable this year. I thought Brendan Armstrong was maybe going to perform a little bit better for the Cavaliers, but obviously going through 9 weeks of football, he hasn't really done anything. Chattanooga, which is an FCS school, so take it for what it's worth. And then Wyoming, who had their two starting quarterbacks, had their starting receiver last year transfer out. Obviously, there's stuff not going well in Wyoming. They should just. I mean, like I expected this game to be a blowout. I follow a little bit of Wyoming just because me and Jacob Fisher, who plans to be on this show sometime in the near future, we kind of joked around with our dynasties in NCAA football 14, and we're kind of like, hey, let's follow this Wyoming team a little bit, and they've had two quarterbacks, a starting receiver, and a starting running back who transferred to Arizona State 2 years ago. But I mean, getting a little sidetracked. We got to wrap this up in 10 minutes on the call. We have, I mean, Illinois is just, they haven't played anyone amazing offensively. So I feel like that's
do
the
agree.
problem. And I mean, they'll find out against Purdue, who I think is a better offensive team than maybe what their record shows. Just a better overall team than what their record shows.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see kind of down the stretch how Illinois performs.
North Carolina, I think Drake May. I watched this game with Pittsburgh that they had over the last weekend. I thought they were able to pull out in the end. I think that they have amazing talent in obviously Drake May, and then their leading receiver. I want to say his last name is Taylor. So no, it's not Taylor. That's their edge rusher. God, what's that receiver's name? Oh, I can't remember the name of him.
Yeah, I agree with that North Carolina take. Obviously, the Notre Dame loss does not look great. Couple squeaked out wins on the road against Miami and Duke. I mean, this is probably the team to face Clemson in that ACC title game. A 2-game lead in the conference, and the head-to-head over Duke and Miami. So really a 3-game lead in that the Atlantic Coast Conference, the Coastal. Um, so we'll see. I do think this North Carolina team's not bad. Explosive offense that I think could potentially give Clemson some troubles, possibly going point for point with them. We'll see. Obviously, Clemson's going to be a better team there, but yeah, I think North Carolina actually. I like their offense. I like what they do, and I think they're a team that could possibly make some noise and potentially be a 2-loss team, maybe one if everything goes right, going into that Clemson game and maybe create some noise.
For sure, they could be one of those teams that like surprise everyone at the end of the year and go into the college football playoff. It's definitely possible for them. They're a really amazing offensive team, and I mean honestly, they don't need to play defense right now. That Notre Dame loss looks bad, but Notre Dame keeps to see impressing me every week. So there's that.
Yeah,
We have Oklahoma State at 18. Not going to really speak on them. They kind of just deserve to be towards the bottom of the top 25 after that game. Tulane at 19, who ended up having a win against Kansas State, who is ranked at 13, and they're currently sitting at 7-1, the highest ranked Group of 5 team. And then Syracuse on 20, who got absolutely ran the ball on constantly and just got dominated defensively by Notre Dame and ended up having to put in Del Rio at quarterback and benching Schrader after he performed miserably, throwing like 5 for 14 for like 4 yards per attempt or something like just extremely terrible.
yeah, kind of a downhill spiral here for Syracuse, back-to-back losses. That was a team that, at least I thought going into the game, potentially maybe had a chance to beat Clemson. Um, and, that game kind of didn't go their way, followed it up by losing to Notre Dame, too. So, hate to see it for a team that, maybe you're thinking, hey, this team might have the chance to go somewhere, and back-to-back losses throws them instead of a top 10 team, which we thought we could possibly be looking at 2 weeks ago, now to a barely top 20 team. So,
Right, and I mean Syracuse got some really good close wins early on in the season. I know they had one versus Purdue and one versus I think it was NC State, and then I mean they ended up taking a really close loss to Clemson, and then now this kind of dominating loss. Honestly, a dominating win for Notre Dame. Uh, I mean nothing much to say. Maybe they'll bounce back. I don't know what Schrader's future is as the starting quarterback, or if they're going to use Del Rio. I feel like Sean Tucker is one of the better playmakers in the ACC. So we'll see what happens from there.
Yeah, up definitely an uphill climb. You know, if you're looking to win the ACC, now you are all of a sudden 2 games back from Clemson because they do have the head-to-head. So I don't think Syracuse gets it done. I don't see Clemson losing 2 games to Louisville, Miami, or South Carolina. But still a potential bowl game on the line, or not bowl game, a potential New Year's Six bowl on the line if Clemson does go to the college football playoff and North Carolina kind of works themselves out of it. A 10-2 Syracuse team would probably be deserving of that ACC bid into the New Year's Six bowl. So
Right, and then to round out the top 25, we have number 21 Wake Forest, number 22 NC State, number 23 Oregon State, 24 Texas, and then 25 UCF. I'll kind of just go through what I think with a couple of these ACC teams ranked in here. Wake Forest had 8 turnovers against Louisville. I didn't even watch the game, and then I watched kind of like the condensed version of it, and I mean, Louisville scored 35 points in the third quarter, and I mean, you just can't turn the ball over like that much against a team and even still think you have a chance. Honestly, I might put them below Texas at this point. I just think that loss was just so bad, and I mean, you got a lot to freaking improve on in a week before your next game, which I don't know who they play off the top of my head, but you got to do a lot. The ACC, I mean, I don't think it's as strong as it's been in some years, but I mean, you still can't take none of your opponents for granted. We have, and then NC State with, I know they ended up putting their third string quarterback Morris the third in after Jack Chambers wasn't performing well, and they ended up squeaking out a win versus a really bad Virginia Tech team. And I mean, other than that, I think with Devin Leary, this NC State team's way different. But right now, no. As for the bottom 3 teams in the top 25, I thought UCF's win was. I don't feel like they were the better team in that game. I think Cincinnati honestly probably played the better game, but UCF and the running back Harvey ended up coming out with the win.
yeah, I will say for that part of the rankings, I was a little surprised to see Oregon State get in there at 23. Um, that was not a very convincing resume for me to confidently put them in. 1 point win against Stanford, got blown out by Oregon State. Was a close game against USC, but yeah, slightly surprised to see them in there. They were 24 in the AP poll, but I honestly was not expecting them at 23. I'm glad UCF's in. I think that's a decent pick there. But I think the team to watch at the bottom here is Texas. Texas, I think they beat Alabama if Quinn Ewers stays healthy. The only other loss there is Texas Tech, which once again, you're playing without Quinn Ewers. That's probably a win there too. This legitimately, if Quinn Ewers stays healthy, could potentially have been a 7-1 Texas team, with the only loss being to Oklahoma State, which would not have looked terrible. A win against Alabama. This is a Texas team that I think is better than a lot of people give them credit for, and maybe one of the best 24th ranked teams that we've seen in a while, at least when they're fully healthy. So it'll be exciting to watch with Kansas State and TCU. Texas they're in position to play spoiler and kind of take away the Big 12's hopes of getting a team into the college football playoff with a win against TCU being at home. So
Right, and I don't think people realize this, but a lot of these, I don't know if I know Bijan Robinson's probably going to be in the draft. I don't know what eligibility or how many years Xavier Worthy's played in college, but Isaiah Naylor, for who was a receiver that transferred from Wyoming, he was injured with like a torn ACL at the beginning of the year, and they had this injury with Quinn Ewers. I think this team next year, I mean, they're going to probably get better recruits and probably get kids in the transfer portal. This Texas team could be really legit next year.
yeah, I think so, and it speaks volumes from what the committee thinks of them. Only 3-loss team to get in. Um, so it'll be interesting to watch. I think Texas. It would not surprise me if you saw them playing in that Big 12 championship. It's a better team than I don't know. I shouldn't say what people think, but it's a better team than their ranking suggests because they dealt with that injury and obviously has not been ideal for them this year. But this is a good Texas team, and I'm excited to watch the game against TCU. here in 2 weeks, just kind of see what happens there. But because I do think that is TCU's probably biggest test for the rest of the season.
All right. Well, that ends the reaction to the college football playoff rankings and having a little bit of a discussion with Logan Berner. I am Noah Drury. This is going to be the end of the episode for the Engage 8 podcast. We will do some sort of preparation for the week, 10 games on Thursday. And yeah, that's all I have to say. Thank you, Logan, for hopping on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was fun.
All right.